We covered the basics of Nightreign the other day. Now it's time for some advanced tips to help you achieve a 100% win rate no matter which Nightlord you're facing. There's some very juicy information to be had today, including how to guarantee that you're exploiting a Nightlord's weakness all of the time, and even how to regain your lost levels. So make sure you subscribe for all of the best Nightreign guides, and let's jump into the first tip. So, diving straight into the juicy tips, you may be tempted to write off an expedition if a member of your team quits or disconnects, but don't let this worry you. In fact, sometimes it could work out in your favor. If you didn't know, enemies' health does scale down for both duos and single player, and this adjustment happens on the fly if players quit, which will make them easier to defeat. And even though some of their stats like their damage and defenses are unaffected, along with the health, their stagger meter is reduced too, so you can stun them and perform critical hits more often. In fact, some of my easiest wins have come from duos, because all enemies' health roughly halves and your ability to stagger them nearly doubles. But because there's two of you, you're still doing around 2/3 of your total damage. Meaning that if both of you are confident with your classes, pretty much any combo should be able to steamroll the game even when there's only two of you remaining. Next up, I wanted to expand on one of the tips I covered in my beginner video, and that was all about exploring camps that correlate to your current Nightlord's weakness, and you can easily tell that by the symbols on your minimap. However, in case you didn't know, if there are no camps on the map that correspond to your current Nightlord's weakness, then one or more of the merchants on the map is guaranteed to sell you some gear that will exploit their weakness. So for instance, if you are fighting Gladius, who is weak to Holy, and there is not a single Holy camp on the map, then one of the merchants is guaranteed to sell at least one armament. Sometimes it may be a bow, or a sword, or a staff, but if you're lucky, there'll actually be multiple to benefit all members of your team, no matter their preferred weapon. And you can go to the merchant, spend a few runes, and now you are armed and ready to deal maximum damage to whatever Nightlord you are currently facing off against. And tying in perfectly with making sure you are dealing the maximum amount of damage to the Nightlord, now that you've gone to a camp or a merchant and you have acquired a weapon that deals the elemental damage that the Nightlord is weak to, this next tip is to make sure you visit and rush down at least one cave boss throughout your playthrough. This is going to give you a smithing stone 2, which will upgrade a blue weapon into a purple. So any rare weapon that you find, you can upgrade to epic with your smithing stone 2, and genuinely this one upgrade is going to make a significant difference to your DPS. And rare or blue weapons, whichever term you want to use, are probably the most common type to find, ironically. You'd think common weapons are the most common, but the game's more generous than that. It tends to give you mostly rare weapons. So smithing stone 2 is the most valuable type, and there is a boss in each cave, and one of the 2 rewards that boss drops is guaranteed to be a smithing stone 2. Now in each of the caves it's a different boss, but you're either looking out for a royal knight, a troll, or a mad pumpkinhead. These are the 3 bosses, these are the 3 enemies that will drop that smithing stone 2. There is 1 in each of the caves. And off the back of my previous tip about rushing caves to get your smithing stone 2, at first, before you get familiar with the layouts, they may be a little bit confusing to you, but all you need to do when you are in a subterranean area is open up your map and press down, which will display a geographically accurate representation of the current dungeon's layout. This way you can very easily use it to identify potential escape routes in the event that the encroaching rains force you to the surface earlier than intended, but also you can use it to find your way around and make sure you're not accidentally looping back on yourself, and to more easily find the boss. Now the boss won't be marked, at least not until you find it, but at least you'll know the layout of the cave and you'll know where you've been and where you haven't, and you can use this to more quickly track it down. Next up, I would very much advise that you learn the difference between charged and uncharged variants of certain characters' skills and ultimate arts. I'll give you 2 examples here so you know exactly what it is I am talking about. For the Guardian, for instance, when using his ultimate art, you will obviously fly up high into the sky and then slam down, dealing a big AoE shockwave to all enemies beneath you and reviving allies at the same time. And using the ultimate this way will only use around 2/3 of your ultimate gauge, allowing you to use it again more frequently. However, if you keep the buttons held down and charge it up, upon landing you will remain immobile briefly and generate a large spherical aura within which your teammates will be granted invulnerability and hardness, which basically means you will automatically deflect all weaker attacks from enemies for a short period of time. And similarly for the Wilder, you can do a charged or uncharged version of his Onslaught stake, with the charged version obviously taking a lot longer and fully depleting your ultimate art gauge, but therefore being a lot more powerful and dealing a lot more stagger damage. So use both variations depending on what the situation calls for. You might want to do the quicker, weaker variant on bosses that are prone to run away so you don't miss them. Next up, I wanted to talk to you about the power of shifting earth events. Now, I'll only skim over this briefly because I have got a full video on the 4 different shifting earth events coming out soon. But please note, if you do happen to be playing with someone, or if you yourself has a shifting earth event active, they have super duper rewards for completing them, and they are pretty much all well worth doing. I'll give you just one example for the purpose of this tip. The one that most people, I believe, will encounter first is Shifting Earth Crater. That is the big volcano type thing right in the top center of the map. You will need probably a good half a day to maybe even a full day to complete this, and you don't want to do it day one. So if you do want to do the creator, make sure you're coordinating with your team through voice comms in my Discord server. We have loads of dedicated channels set up for just that, and you want to communicate with each other on day one. Right, day 2, we are going to hit the volcano, we're going to do the crater. And the reason you want to do this is if you manage to progress all the way to the bottom, not only are there a few mini bosses and lots of runes to be had, but when you finally beat the magma worm at the bottom, you will now be able to interact with a forge that will upgrade one of your weapons to legendary for free. But it gets even better than that. The weaker the weapon is when you upgrade it, the more powerful it will become. So if you upgrade an epic, it will become a legendary +1. But if you upgrade a common, it will become a legendary +3. So if you have the Shifting Earth Crater event active and you decide you want to do it, you might want to hang on to your starter weapon because it can become potentially the most powerful weapon in the game when interacting with the forge at the bottom of the crater. And also, as a little added bonus, if it's your first time doing this, you'll get an achievement. So make sure you do interact with all the Shifting Earth events. They are all so damn good. Next up, remember you have a much faster version of sprinting, now called Surge Sprint. You don't want to just hold the dodge button down to run a bit faster while moving. There is a dedicated sprint button, L3 on the controller, and this Surge Sprint is significantly faster, along with a few of the boss drop loot orbs, giving your Surge Sprint even better, more enhanced abilities as well. This sprint makes you run as fast as if you were permanently mounted on Torrent, so you want to get in the habit of using this almost exclusively. There is one potential situation where you might want to use a regular sprint instead. So as you probably already know, when you surge sprint, you will lose a chunk of stamina to be able to begin that burst. Then your stamina will start to slowly increase again until you are back to max. The exception is if you are facing a night boss or the Night Lord, your stamina will slowly drain. So if you're fighting a slower boss, you might want to stick to regular running when fighting the night bosses, because you won't lose that initial burst of stamina. Your stamina will just slowly drain. So it's a bit better for stamina conservation if you are using the regular run during night bosses. But as I say, 95% of the time, Surge Sprint is the way to go. Next up, this one is for people who want to 100% everything and get all of the remembrance quests done. If you are stuck trying to get certain remembrance quests completed because it's really finicky to matchmake with people, because like if they've got one active, you can't do it. And sometimes even if they've gone to the journal and turned it off, the matchmaking kind of hangs and it still won't do it, and you'll have to go and try and play with randoms. It's very confusing, honestly, and a teensy bit broken unless they have finally fixed it before this video comes out. But regardless, my top tip for quite a few of the remembrance quests, where it's literally just like drop in, kill a mini boss, and loot a whetstone, just go in and do that solo. It's so easy to do. Clear a few camps and get to around level 4 or 5, and then you can very easily go and do your remembrance quest. Then, to complete it, don't quit out of the match. You need to finish a run. So all you need to do is just get to the Night 1 boss, let them kill you, job done. You've now completed your quest. Simple as that. So I would advise to do most of the quests in this format solo. It's going to be far quicker and easier, honestly. Next up, kind of coinciding with an earlier tip about merchants and when they sell items corresponding to the Nightlord's weakness. If you are struggling to find them, ideally you want to find a township. The icon for the township is this. Sometimes it is easy to get it confused with a camp if you're not looking very specifically for it. This is a township. They are kind of rare, but a merchant is guaranteed to spawn around the vicinity of a township. If you're struggling to find one, the next best place is outside forts, especially the ones where you have to run underneath into the basement rather than the ones where you can go up the stairs and through the doors. There will always be a merchant outside of the basement entrance forts. They're your best two bets. Obviously, merchants spawn in other places as well, but if you want the guaranteed spawns, they are the two. That is where you should be looking. This next tip is really obvious when you know it, but it's so crazy how it's never explained, and it can make dying feel so much more intimidating than it actually is. If you didn't know, obviously when you die, it says you lose a level, and you do. So you die at level 9, you respawn at level 8. You can obviously go back and collect your runes. Okay, that's great, I'm still level 8. Did you know, for instance, if you die with 10,000 runes, you'll lose the 10,000 runes. You go back up, you pick up your runes, you've picked up around 46,000. What has gone on here? The level you lost gets put back into the runes that you collect. So long story short, dying in this game is nowhere near as evil as it makes it sound like. All you need to do is head to your nearest site of grace, level back up again. Literally no harm done. You are exactly back to where you were 2 minutes ago. So all you're losing is a little bit of time, which obviously in Nightreign is a bit of a pain because you only really get 40 minutes anyway. But you aren't losing levels. It is temporary. You can just go level back up again. I cannot believe this information is not more readily available. It's huge, and it puts a lot of people off thinking that it is so unforgiving. So now you know, go tell everyone. This next tip is all about unlocking the later remembrances for your characters. You might get to a point where you think, have I finished the remembrance? I'm not really sure. It says 6 out of 6. Does that mean I'm done? I have no objective. How does this work? You will know you're done with a character when you unlock that character's remembrance skin. If you haven't yet got to that point, the one and only thing you need to do is beat a Nightlord with that respective character, and when you get back to Roundtable Hold, it will tell you, boom, memory fragment unlocked. You can now progress to the next part of the quest. It's as simple as that. So TLDR, if you have a character who you don't have their remembrance skin for and they don't have a quest active, go and beat a Nightlord with them and you will. It is that simple. And next up, my friends, this is just one of the many confusing quirks about matchmaking that I thought it would be worth people knowing, so you're not confused as to when you're progressing your quests or your friends progressing theirs, and why am I seeing the Rotted Woods right now? I thought my Shifting Earth was Crater. I'm so confused. What's going on? So, long story short, if you have pre-made a group before you go into matchmaking, i.e. you're not using a password, but you've invited everyone via like Steam or PSN, then the person who invited the other two people, they will be considered the host, and it will be their world state in effect. So if both of you have 2 different Shifting Earth events and both of you have 2 different quests on, the person who invited you, they're the leader, it's their Shifting Earth that takes effect, and it's only their game that will be progressed. Obviously, you will still get the Nightlord victory, but they are the host for all intents and purposes. Also, please note, by doing it this way, you can override the not being able to see Shifting Earths that you haven't yet discovered. So for those of you that are particularly precious about spoilers, be careful who hosts your game, because you might be seeing stuff that you haven't yet discovered in your game yet. That's it for my top 12 advanced tips for Nightreign. I've got an absolute ton of videos already out with loads more on the way, so make sure you follow, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, and turn the notifications on, please, my friend. It really, truly greatly helps. And with that, all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.